Well, hello. Well, I live near Portland, Oregon, and we've had two wildfires. So it's kind of overcast and really smoky here. And I apologize for my voice, but it is really smoky here. And if you're anywhere close to wildfires, I send my sentiments out to you for that. So thank you again for joining the live tonight. And, again, a reminder that finding true love begins with you. And that means connecting to yourself and loving yourself and taking care of yourself and developing new life skills. So finding true love really does begin with you. And tonight for our topic of discussion is just managing triggers through awareness and also by building confidence. And, if you've been in a toxic relationship or a dysfunctional relationship or whatever, you're very aware of toxic behaviors and antagonistic behaviors and just anything. You might even be triggered by some of those behaviors. And you've realized that in an intimate partner relationship, but that also means that only if you've only ever experienced an intimate partner relationship, once you're aware of those type of triggering behaviors and different things and different dynamics that happen in relationship with a partner, that those things actually happen in other relationships too. They happen in families, they happen in work groups, they happen in churches, they happen with friend groups. And so those different behaviors that you've realized an intimate partner can come into play in all different sorts of relationships. And it's actually very surprising when you start waking up to some of these dynamics, these dysfunctional dynamics in different relationships. And it's a dynamic to really be on the lookout for. Those things that you realize in intimate partner relationships, the dysfunctional communication, the lack of boundaries, the antagonism, the word salad, a whole host of other things. And if you think of other toxic behaviors, you can drop those in the comments. Things that you guys have realized, or ladies have realized in different types of relationships. One of the things that if you've realized that type of relationship, whether that's intimate partner, with family, with friends, with work groups, with even churches and other groups that you may be a part of, that's really a dynamic that you can easily be pulled back into. It's something that we're familiar, and, those dynamics just can be very sneaky and covert, and sometimes you're not really aware. But that's really the trick, is building awareness and developing tools and growing beyond those triggers, and there's really two options. When you've been aware of those type of dynamics in a relationship, you really have two options. The first option is you be fearful and you really lean into your fear. You step on the brake pedal of life. You disengage from interacting with people. You go inward and you isolate. And then your world gets so small because you are so fearful of having to deal with these type of relationships or these type of dynamics. And really, if you lean into fear, then you're not really trusting yourself, with all of that. So that's the first option. You're fearful and you're stepping on the brake pedal of life. The other option is to lean into the fears, lean into the triggers, and get curious in life. And that might be like putting your foot on the gas pedal to just pedal along, to hit some gas, to view the scenery. And if you have a mind of curiosity, it'll just be oh, this is happening, or, oh, that's curious that's happening again with this person, or, oh, isn't that curious that this happens with these group of people when XYZ come into play. And, when we lean into our triggers and we get curious about them, Then we really start to build awareness around our own triggers and other behaviors and dynamics, almost like we can rise up 10,000 foot above the situation. We develop new tools in how to handle those different types of behaviors. And we start trusting our intuition and our discernment and our wisdom. And when we're leaning into those triggers and we're leaning into those different types of different dysfunctional things that are triggering to us, then we're really leaning in and we're letting the past be a tool to our future and how we can learn more about ourselves, learn more and build confidence and learn new tools and new skill sets to overcome these different dynamics. Because with awareness, almost everything can be overcomable. And I'll just share two experiences. One of the first experiences with that happened a few years ago was I was part of this church group. And I'm pretty active in my church community. And I was part of this church group, and there was a gentleman that I had known from a different church group. And now we were both part of this other group that was leading ministry with a group of about 30 people. And so I was stepping up to be a leader of this group. And, you know, what I was noticing with this one person was that when others were around, I was fine. But then when it was just him and I, there would be some controlling behaviors, there would be bossy behaviors, and when I started to ask questions, there would be a whole bunch of word salad. So there became this like really weird dynamic. And what happened for me was that really caused like a very anxiety-filled moment. And I remember sometimes going out to my car, and part of how my anxiety presents itself is with reactive asthma. So I would have to go out and have my inhaler. And I was just like, wow, that's really curious that this is happening with this person. And, you know, I started to pay attention, and I kept a little notebook of the different behaviors. And I was like, wow, this is really curious that when I'm with other people, this dynamic doesn't happen. But when I'm with this person, this is how my body reacts. This is what's being said. This is what I'm trying to do. This is what he's doing. And after that happened a few times, like in the same manner, I was like, I got to put some tools together. And I started to practice my ABCs. So I was practicing being assertive and speaking up. And I started to set boundaries. And I was communicating more effectively. And I was just being really present and being really assertive to those different dynamics when there would be control and there would be bossy stuff. You know, I also started to put in place energy protocols for protecting my energy. And I also kind of managed my anxiety. I kind of lived on my inhaler a little bit till I could really get underway with what I was doing and how I was operating with all of that. And, you know, over a 3-month period, I would be able to go into those situations with this person, and then my anxiety wouldn't arise as much. And I was building more confidence, and I was holding my boundaries, and I was communicating, and I could see the whole thing from a 10,000 foot level that with this person, that these dynamics were happening. And, you know, over time, I just realized that I didn't really enjoy being around this person, that there were a lot of different characteristics that reminded me of the ex and how he communicated, and how there was like verbal manipulation and almost like some control, like coercive control elements to it. But I wanted to make sure that it was me, you know, that I wasn't reacting, that it was, you know, actually validated by myself and I could understand it. And, you know, over like a 6-month period, I just was like, yeah, I got a handle on this. I know exactly what's going on. I know the dynamic that's happening with this. I'm stepping more into my power by practicing my ABCs, by putting in energy protocols. And I'm like managing my anxiety and like how often I'm talking to this person or how interactive I am with this person. And I really got into like more of observer role with myself and this other person and how they were interacting with others as well. And I just got confirmation of what I was feeling in intuition, what I was feeling in body. And over time, I decided that this was not a group that was good for me with this dynamic, that it was something I was always going to have to manage, and I would have to manage aggressively. And I'm capable of managing it aggressively, but that's not something that I really want to be in that active environment time over time, especially when I'm volunteering and I'm trying to help other women. And so I chose to leave the group. I didn't really want to participate in that anymore. So that's one aspect. And that was kind of a triggering behavior of someone who was very self-centered, who was very controlling, who was very bossy. And then when asked different questions about it, ended up giving a whole bunch of word salad. So for me, I worked through that trigger. I know who that person is. I don't see that person very often, but it was a gift. I choose to look at that as a gift for me to be able to actively work my tools of having my ABCs, assertiveness, boundaries, and communication, energy protocols to make sure that I'm not being hypervigilant or taking on energy from someone like that, and just managing my own anxiety with self-care after those meetings. So that's one situation in my life that involved kind of a toxic person, shall I say. And the second one that many of you have heard about was my job interview that I had about a month ago. I can't believe it's been almost a month from my big job interview. But I found this job that I was really interested in. And it was something that I've done in the past that I really enjoyed. It was around emergency management. And I felt really good about this job, and I enjoyed dressing up. I felt very confident in my abilities, and this job was very complex. But I was a little bit fearful a little bit as well. I hadn't interviewed for such a job in quite a while. And so, 2 weeks before, I was practicing interviewing. I had my, practice questions there, reviewed my resume. I was doing some mirroring work, practicing in the mirror to make sure that I had a connection with myself and that I was being confident. And I also was doing breathing exercises and also taking my magnesium for body tension. And, I still was fearful a little bit about and had anxiety about this job interview. It was a really cool job. And yet I was still fearful a little bit, but I really wanted the experience. And I really pushed myself to go have this interview. And like many of you know, is that, there were 6 people being interviewed. And then I got through the first interview and I was confident. I was like, yeah, I nailed this thing. And, but I had a lot to do with all of that. I was practicing, I was doing mirror work, I was doing my breathing exercises. I took cold showers to make sure that my nervous system wasn't activated. And then I was taking magnesium to relax. I got a call within an hour that, hey, you've been selected to go have a second interview. And so, okay, great. I was able to lean all into that. And again, I had to do nervous system management. I had to take a cold bath before the second interview. It was between me and another person. And, throughout that whole thing, it was confidence building. I really wanted the experience and I really pushed myself to do it. And I, went to the second interview And I did pretty good in the second interview. It was with the executive managers. And, you know the rest of the story. I didn't get selected. But that was something that I really, really wanted to do. Like, I really felt like I owed it to myself to go interview for that. And I needed to manage my nervous system. I needed to manage my fears. I needed to manage, as I've shared with many of you before, is that there's been some cognitive deficiencies with how I process, different words, and especially when I get in stressful situations. And so I was really curious to see how I was going to do with all of that, and even if I could do a big job like that again. So, for me, I really decided to push into that experience. And, I've heard it somewhere else that you either get what you want or you learn. And, I definitely learned in that whole process that, by leaning into fear and leaning into that experience, and leaning into being vulnerable and uncomfortable and taking messy action and leaning into my fears, that there actually was this really amazing confidence building thing that happened. Like, this whole confidence building that just came out of nowhere for me. And, by giving myself that interview process, that interview experience, it really led to me trusting myself. And, maybe you guys even see it here, but it's been a real big confidence builder that I pushed outside my limits. I challenged myself. I went up for that interview. I drove up there. I stayed in a hotel. It was something I really wanted to do. I was fearful. I managed my nervous system. I did good, got to the second round of interviews, and I interviewed the second time. And, that really wouldn't happen if I stayed on the brake pedal, and if I disengaged and I isolated and I was fearful. I wouldn't have ever realized the confidence building. And now my brain is like, hey, I can talk to people. I can do videos. I can be confident. And, just learning new skills. And, I leaned in. I got curious about things. I've learned lots about managing my nervous system, managing triggers, being compassionate and loving towards myself. And, when I hit the gas pedal and I was like, okay, I'm going to go check out this job interview and check out this job. I'm going to go like sightseeing, like, okay, what if I do get the job? Or what if I don't get the job? What am I going to do next? And it's really been in the last month, those people in my inner circle, like, wow, Denise, you're like way more confident and you're showing up differently. And I just want to say that option of leaning in and getting curious is really where the growth is, and learning and developing new tools while you're fearful, while you're engaging with your triggers, while you're engaging with your activated nervous system. That's where the growth really comes into. And, when we can master our triggers by harnessing awareness, by the things that we learned in relationship with others, those things that may be triggering us, and if we can be aware of those, that can be really powerful. And if we lean into that awareness and we build skills, then that actually can lead to huge confidence wins and just propelling you into the next season in your life. And that also helps us to transform behaviors. And so I just really wanted to share, we really have two options when it comes to triggers. And we really have two options. We either can stay fearful and we can hit the brake pedal and disengage and isolate and be fearful, and our world gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Or we can lean in, we can get curious, and we can hit the gas and check out the scenery and check out the possibilities. And we can build awareness, we can develop tools. And then when we build those things, the awareness, and we develop the tools and we start to know ourselves in a new way with all of what we're going through, then we start trusting our intuition. We start trusting our discernment. We start trusting our wisdom. And all of that then leads into like huge levels of confidence. And so I just really wanted to share that with you, is that there really is two options: be fearful, stay small, or lean in and get curious and build tools and build confidence and build intuition, discernment, and wisdom. And so I just really wanted to share those two experiences with you. And, if you have any other experiences that you're working through or would like to share, go ahead and, drop those in the comments, like when you've leaned into your fears or your triggers. Drop them below. I mean, that's really a big win, when you can go toe to toe with someone or something that used to trigger you. Or if you are in the awareness stage, just be curious, like, oh, wow, that thing's happening again. This is how my body's responding. This is how my mind is starting to think. And this is what this other person's doing. This is what I'm doing. Like, that's like a win. That's total winning right there. So if this is, something that if you have an experience or you want to share about your leaning into a fear trigger, it would be very helpful for other women to know what other things that are triggering or, that you're working on. And, for me, again, it was a person that presented very similar to the communication of the style of the ex. And I needed to slay that, because if I come into contact with another man like that, I need to be able to slay that beast and not be another victim and just lay down like how I did in the marriage, with communication. And I mean, I really didn't know what was going on. So now I have more awareness and I'm like, I know what's going on here. I can go ahead and I can act differently. I can be assertive. I can set boundaries. I can communicate. And, again, step into fear, like wherever you're fearful, pushing yourself can lead to great confidence. And I just wanted to share that with you ladies tonight, those two stories. And if you have any stories, please drop them in the comments. And I look forward to talking with you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.